Well, it's time now to take a look at our culture slot, and a triple bill of rare Samuel Beckett plays have started a run in London. The production is at the Old Red Lion Theatre in Islington. The three dark comedies, Act Without Words Part 1, Ruffa Theatre Part 2 and Catastrophe are all directed by Sara Joyce, who joins me live in the studio. Good morning, Sarah. Now, why did you pick these three shorts by Beckett?
Well, firstly, I love them. Mainly I picked them because I found them really funny. And I mean, I studied Beckett when I was in Trinity, and always found it difficult to get my head around it, and thought it would be a great challenge to try and do some Beckett in a way that didn't alienate audiences. That was sort of what I was interested in, because I've always found it a bit difficult to understand his work. And
you wouldn't be the only one, let me tell you. I did Waiting for Godot, and I still, to this day, have no idea what it's about.
To be honest, I don't know if anyone can say what any of it's about, because he didn't say himself what anything meant, so everything's just speculation. But I think
interpretation. Yeah,
and I think that the way that it's written about sometimes can be a bit intimidating and slightly alienating to people who haven't studied it. And I think we forget that, well, they were written to be plays, they were written to be performed and enjoyed, and that was really the sort of task that we as a company wanted to do.
Now, throughout Beckett's life, his sort of work was split into sort of three sections, a lot of people have said. And the plays that you've selected have spanned several decades. So some of the other ones, so Act Without Words Part 1 and Ruffa Theatre Part 2, were written in the 50s, the late 50s, whereas Catastrophe was written in the 80s. Is there a marked difference in the kind of language and the feeling of the plays?
There's definitely a difference in, I mean, there's even a difference in the sort of outlook of them. I would say that Act Without Words is a lot more oppressive in a way. It's sort of about, the three of them kind of talk about control and the controlled and the controller, and in Act Without Words it's very sort of oppressive, whereas by the time you get to Catastrophe there's a lot of hope in it. And it was dedicated to Václav Havel, who was a Czech dissident and a friend of Becketts.
Explain to anyone who doesn't know about Beckett what the sort of the synopsis is for each of those plays.
Well, so Act Without Words is actually a mime. It's completely silent, hence the name Act Without Words. And it's a man he's trapped in what Beckett calls a deserted landscape, and objects start flying in around him. And one of them is a bottle of water, and he's trying to grab it, and he fails. The second one, Ruffa Theatre, is that's two bureaucrats they're in an apartment building, and they're discussing the life of C, who's at the window, and he's thinking about killing himself. And then Catastrophe is about a director and his assistant director, and they're preparing for the opening night of their big show, and they have an actor on a plinth in front of them.
And they're whipping themselves, aren't they?
They're whipping themselves into a frenzy. So they're kind of they're getting increasingly sort of fervent and
anxious,
frustrated.
Not
literally, no.
Right, I thought I read that wrong then. Sorry. They're working themselves up. That's what we do here at Rise, with ourselves.
Yeah.
So the production company that you're dealing with, Whispering Beats. Why did you decide to work with them, and what's the significance of trying to bring sort of like the Irish theme, as it were, to the greater public?
Well, so it's Whispering Beasts, like monsters, yes, but Whispering Beasts works as well. And I actually am a co-founder of the company, so I founded it with an actor, Brian Moriarty, and it was that we're both Irish and came over here to London to try and make theatre, and we found that we were talking about a lot of Irish writers and Irish plays sort of very casually that we sort of knew, and we found that people didn't know who they were. So this sort of literary canon that we had grown up with hadn't totally made it across the border, and we thought we'd capitalise on that audience and that hunger there seems to be for Irish writing. And so the desire is to bring classics that haven't been done here to a new audience, but also to encourage emerging Irish writing, because there's a lot of Irish writers living in London at the minute.
Now, Beckett is not a playwright that you necessarily study at school. It's generally his works will be looked at if you go on to university or something like that, because it is quite difficult. So how do you, your interpretation of his work, how do you intend to bring in new audiences? What are you doing that's different, that you're trying to kind of, you know, break down these barriers, saying that actually it is something that anyone of any age can watch?
I think the aesthetic has a lot to do with it. We've focused a lot on a very on a very clean and very bright and vibrant and energetic aesthetic, so it's appealing to look at to start with. And then, to be honest, comedy, I think humour is a universal enjoyment factor, and so I've really looked for the comedy in each piece.
But it's dark humour, isn't it? That's
dark.
The key, isn't it? It's not the most obvious laugh out loud humour.
No, not at all. I mean, it's all about human existence and being human. So I've just tried to key in on those sort of funny, recognisable moments, which hasn't been easy, but yeah.
And with the theatre company Whispering Beasts, you're also working with a lot of young writers. How easy or difficult is it now to try and get young writers heard, their voices and their work heard?
It's okay, actually. I think that there's a real desire to see new writing. It's matching it with the high quality of a production. So there's a lot of brilliant new writing venues in London, and I've been working at Soho Theatre, which is probably one of the best. And it's great that they encourage, you know, young and just anyone writing new pieces to be brave and take risks. But I think where there could be more done is matching it with a high quality production, so when audiences are paying to see tickets, they are sort of seeing something very finished and very polished. There's sometimes a tendency for new work to be accepted as being fringy or in the draft stages, and it's trying to match that. Is
there enough funding for people in your industry? Or, I mean, obviously everyone's going to say there's always a need for funding, but how do you nurture talent, and how do you attract new talent when, you know, obviously the industry itself doesn't necessarily spit out a large kind of fee?
That's really difficult, actually, and it was something that was part of the remit of this show, was that we had to pay everyone across the board, and it's Arts Council does provide a lot of funding, and it's great. It's just a sort of hard, long process, and there's a lot of competition with people making stuff. So I don't know. There's never enough. I think that there definitely needs to be improvement in ensuring that every person involved in making a production is paid at a basic minimum rate, because at the minute too many people sort of are taken on as interns or as part of voluntary work experience, but it really should be paid. And I think because it's theatre and because it's arts and has that sort of fun element, that it can be ignored that it is hard work and it is working hours and it is, you know, talent that you're using. So yeah.
Okay. And Sarah, the play is running until the 25th of April?
Yes.
At the Old Red Lion in Islington?
Red Lion in Islington.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.